After the Pentagon confirmed it had launched an airstrike that killed top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, young Americans began worrying about the possibility of being drafted in a potential war stemming from the strike. Almost immediately, searches for World War III and World War III draft spiked on Google search and became trending topics on Twitter, sparking copious memes of people imagining how they could avoid being drafted into the military. While the US military relies entirely on a voluntary corps, all Americans aged 18 to 25 are mandated to be registered with the Selective Service Administration, which maintains the list of Americans who would be called upon to serve if Congress instituted a draft. Registering for the Selective Service is a requirement to receive federal student loans and access to the federal programs, qualify for federal employment, and in many states obtain a driver's license. On Friday, the SSA tweeted out that they were conducting business as usual in response to their website crashing due to people searching for information about the draft and verifying their registration. But that leads to the next question. What is the draft? The US first officially used mandated military conscription during the Civil War, where both the Union and Confederate armies drafted soldiers to fight. Since then, the United States has conscripted service members into the military in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and most recently the Vietnam War. However, in 1973, the draft was eliminated and the military became volunteer-based. In previous times of conscription, men registered for the Selective Service would enter into a draft lottery based on their date of birth, and those selected through the lottery would enter the military service after passing a physical and psychological examination. In the wake of the Iran strike, many people wondered if using federal aid programs, including student loans and Pell Grants, increased the likelihood of being drafted. FAFSA, the office in the Department of Education which administers federal aid, clarified that receiving student loans doesn't make someone more or less likely to be hypothetically drafted. But that leads to the next question. Could the United States bring back the draft? Even if the United States gets into a war with Iran as the result of the recent strike, it's both politically and practically improbable for the draft to be revived. As the Selective Service and FAFSA both pointed out, Congress would need to pass legislation then signed into law by the president, authorizing a military draft for any new conflict. Because popular support for military conscription is so low, legislation to reestablish a draft would be very unlikely to pass either the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives or the Republican-controlled Senate. Kathleen Weldon of Cornell University's Roper Center, which conducts and tracks public opinion polling, wrote in the Huffington Post in 2017 that public support for a draft has only fallen since the end of the Vietnam War. As Weldon noted, a CBS News poll conducted in 2006 found that 76% of Americans opposed drafting Americans to serve in the Iraq War, with just 20% supporting such a measure. Also, a CNN ORC poll conducted 11 years later in 2017 similarly gauges just 20% support for a return to conscription. While some Democratic politicians have argued in favor of incentivizing or requiring young Americans to complete non-military domestic national service programs, virtually no politician on either side of the aisle has advocated bringing back the military draft. Furthermore, an effort to administer a draft today would run up some significant bureaucratic and administrative hurdles with possibly little payoff. The Pentagon estimated in a 2017 report that about 71% of people in the United States aged 17 to 24 are ineligible for military service due to either being medically obese, having a criminal record, or not having earned a high school diploma or GED. Taking into account the additional people who would apply for deferments or couldn't serve for other medical reasons, the pool of military-eligible people could be quite small. But even though the draft is unlikely to return anytime soon, all men between the ages of 18 to 25 are still required to register with the SSA.